I've been staring at the mud-caked Buick for 3 hours now, and the man inside hasn't moved once. Not to stretch, not to check his phone, not even to blink, as far as I can tell from here behind the bulletproof glass of the Quick Stop's register. His silhouette just sits there in the driver's seat under the fluorescent glow of pump 3, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, head perfectly straight, waiting for something, or watching. My shift started at midnight. It's 3:17 a.m. now, and Marcus, the day guy, won't be here to relieve me until 6. 3 more hours alone with whatever the hell is happening out there. I tell myself he's just sleeping, pulled over because he was too tired to drive. Happens all the time on Route 42. Truckers, college kids driving through the night, salesmen trying to make an early meeting. They buy coffee, use the bathroom, maybe nap for 20 minutes with the engine running. But this guy hasn't done any of that. He pulled in at 12:34. I remember checking the clock, hoping the night would go faster, and he's been sitting there ever since. Engine off, lights off, just sitting. I should probably check on him. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Make sure he's not having a medical emergency or something. But there's something about the way he's positioned. So perfectly still, so deliberately placed, that makes my stomach clench every time I think about walking out there. The fluorescence above the pumps flicker. They've been doing that more lately. Everything about this place is falling apart. The cracked asphalt, the bathrooms that reek of mildew and defeat, the ancient security system that barely works. I took this job because it was the only thing hiring that didn't drug test, and now I'm stuck in this purgatory between the interstate and the pine woods, watching some creep play statue in his car. I try to focus on other things, restocking the beef jerky display, wiping down counters that are already clean, but my eyes keep drifting back to that Buick, to him. Around 3:45, I finally work up the nerve to do something useful. The security system might be ancient, but the cameras still record, even if half of them don't work anymore. I pull up the grainy footage on the manager's computer in the back office, rewinding to see when he arrived. There he is, pulling in at 12:34, just like I remembered. But as I scroll back further, my mouth goes dry. He's there yesterday too. Same car, same pump, same position, same mud coating the vehicle like he drove through a swamp to get here. I keep scrolling. 3 days ago, 5 days ago, a week back, every single night, always arriving between midnight and 1, always parking at pump 3, always sitting there, motionless, until the footage cuts out around dawn when my shift ends and I'm too exhausted to care about anything except sleep. 7 nights in a row, wearing what looks like the exact same clothes, a dark jacket and baseball cap pulled low, never getting out, never moving. How did I not notice this before? My hands shake as I zoom in on the license plate. The image quality is garbage, but I can make out most of it. TXR 4729. I grab my phone and consider my options. This is definitely weird enough to call the cops, right? I'm not overreacting? Screw it. I dial 911. There's someone suspicious at the Quick Stop on Route 42, I tell the dispatcher, trying to keep my voice steady. He's been sitting in his car for hours, multiple nights. I think something might be wrong. She takes my information, tells me a deputy is on the way, 20 minutes, maybe 30. I thank her and hang up, then make the mistake of looking at the monitor again. The car is empty. My heart hammers against my ribs. I frantically switch between camera angles. Pump 3, the parking lot, the side entrance. Nothing. No movement. No man. Just his car sitting there with the driver's door hanging open. Interior light casting a weak yellow glow into the darkness. Where the hell did he go? I'm out of my chair before I can think, rushing back to the register area. The store is empty. Aisles of chips and candy and motor oil, all perfectly still. I check the bathroom. Empty. The storage room. Nothing. Then I see him. He's standing outside, maybe 10 feet from the front entrance. Just standing there in the parking lot, facing the store. Facing me. The fluorescent lights wash over his face, and I can finally see his features clearly. Mud. He's covered in it. Not just his clothes, his skin, his hair, everything. It's caked in the lines of his face, clumped in his hair. His eyes are the only clean spots, 2 bright points staring through the grime, and he's smiling. I back away from the glass, fumbling for my phone. My fingers are numb, clumsy. How long until the cops get here? 15 minutes? 10? He starts walking toward the entrance. "We're closed," I shout, knowing it's stupid. The sign on the door clearly says 24 hours. "The police are coming." He keeps walking, slow, measured steps. His smile doesn't waver. I run for the door and slam my palm against the lock button. The electronic deadbolt clicks into place just as he reaches the entrance. He stops inches from the glass, that mud-caked face filling my vision. Up close, I can see that the mud isn't just mud. There's something else mixed in, something dark and rust-colored. Blood. "Please," I whisper, "just leave." He raises one hand and places it flat against the glass. His fingers leave brown smears. Then, impossibly, he speaks. His voice is muffled but audible through the door. "You shouldn't have called them." Red and blue lights suddenly strobe across the parking lot. A sheriff's cruiser pulls in, and I've never been so relieved to see another human being in my life. The man doesn't move, doesn't even turn around. He just keeps staring at me with those two bright eyes. "Step away from the door," the deputy shouts, hand on his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." The man finally turns slowly and raises his muddy hands. The deputy approaches cautiously, calling for backup on his radio. Within minutes, there are 3 cruisers, their lights turning the whole scene into a surreal disco. I watch through the glass as they handcuff him as they search his car, and then I see one of the deputies open the trunk. He jerks back like he's been electrocuted, starts shouting into his radio. 2 other deputies rush over, and I can see their faces go pale even from here. One of them looks at me through the window and mouths 2 words: "Stay inside." They found 47 missing person flyers in his trunk, all women, all young, all last seen somewhere along Route 42 near the Quick Stop. Some of the flyers were 10 years old, the paper yellowed and brittle. They also found rope, duct tape, a shovel, and a hunting knife with residue the lab would later confirm as human blood. The license plate came back registered to Calvin Marsh, who died 6 months ago in a hit and run right outside this gas station. Except Calvin Marsh didn't die. He staged it after he killed a 19-year-old girl named Sarah Chen, making it look like someone hit him and fled. He'd been living in the woods ever since, returning to the scene night after night, watching the place where he'd destroyed her life, and hunting for others. The detective who interviewed me said he probably came inside to kill me because I'd called the police. Said I was lucky. I don't feel lucky. I feel like I'm drowning in the memory of those eyes staring at me through the mud and the glass. I quit the next day, but sometimes late at night I still see him in my mind, still sitting out there at Pump 3, watching, waiting, always waiting. The fuel gauge had been hovering near empty for the last 20 miles, the needle trembling like a dying heartbeat. When the neon sign finally emerged from the darkness, gas, food, restrooms, I exhaled relief I didn't know I'd been holding. It was 2:47 a.m., and this stretch of Highway 19 had been nothing but empty road and skeletal trees for the past hour. I pulled up to the pump, the fluorescent lights casting everything in a sickly yellow pallor. The station looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. Rust-streaked pumps, cracked pavement, a squat building with bars on the windows. But beggars can't be choosers, and I was running on fumes in more ways than one. The bell above the door gave a weak jingle as I entered. Behind the counter stood a man in a faded blue uniform, the name Patch too worn to read. He was thin, almost gaunt, with deep shadows under his eyes. What struck me immediately was his stillness. He didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me at all. "Hey," I said, forcing friendliness into my voice. "Pump 3, whenever you're ready." Nothing. His hands remained flat on the counter, his gaze fixed somewhere past my left shoulder. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. I glanced around the store, aisles of dusty snacks, a coffee pot that looked like it had been brewing the same pot since morning, a humming cooler in the back. "Sir?" Finally, his hand moved to flip a switch. I heard the pump click on outside, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Something twisted in my gut, that primal warning system we've spent millennia honing. Something was wrong here. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe he was just tired, maybe he'd had a rough shift. I grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler and approached the counter again. That's when I noticed the security monitors behind him, 4 screens that should have shown different angles of the store and parking lot. Every single one displayed nothing but grainy static, punctuated by occasional flickers of darkness. "Your camera's out?" I asked. He didn't answer, but I saw his jaw tighten, saw his fingers curl slightly against the counter. The water bottle suddenly felt heavy in my hand. I set it down carefully, backing away. "You know what? I'll just pump and go. Keep the change." His eyes finally moved, tracking me as I turned toward the door. They were flat, empty, like looking at a mannequin. I hurried outside, my heart hammering. The night air felt oppressive, thick with the smell of gasoline and something else, something organic and rotting. I fumbled with the pump, my hands shaking slightly. Every horror movie I'd ever seen was playing on repeat in my head. Every true crime podcast. This was exactly the kind of place they found people. $60 worth of gas never pumped so slowly. I kept glancing at the store windows, but the glare from the lights made it impossible to see inside. Was he still standing there, watching me? Halfway through, my bladder reminded me why I'd been grateful to see this place. I'd been holding it for the last 40 miles. I looked at the grimy restroom door on the side of the building and cursed under my breath. I could wait, I should wait, but it was at least another hour to the next town, and I made the decision. Quick in, quick out, leave the pump running, keep the car in sight. The restroom was worse than I'd imagined. Flickering fluorescent light, cracked tiles, a smell that made my eyes water. I did what I needed to do as quickly as possible, already planning my escape route, straight back to the car, engine on, gone. That's when I heard it, a sound, muffled, coming from above. I froze, listening. There it was again, a rhythmic thumping, then something else, a voice. No, voices. High-pitched, desperate, screaming. Someone was screaming through the ceiling vent. My blood turned to ice water. The sounds were deliberate, frantic. Someone banging, someone crying out. The words were indistinct, but the terror in them was crystal clear. I bolted from the restroom, my mind racing. Call the police, get help. My phone was in the car, but I burst through the store door instead, the words already tumbling out. There's someone. I heard screaming in the ceiling or attic or something. We need to call. The clerk was still in the same position, but now he was looking directly at me. His expression hadn't changed, hadn't flickered with surprise or concern. He just stared with those dead eyes. You shouldn't have come here, he said softly. His voice was flat, mechanical. The last guy didn't either. The air left my lungs. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but my legs felt disconnected from my body. What did you say? The last guy, he repeated, his head tilting slightly. Heard the same thing, went to the bathroom, came running in here just like you. He paused. He's still here. A heavy footfall sounded behind me. I spun to see a massive man in a trucker's jacket blocking the door. His smile revealed yellowed teeth. Where you think you're going? The world tilted. This was happening. This was really happening. They were going to... I lunged for the counter, grabbing the first thing I could find, a coffee pot, and hurled it at the trucker. It shattered against his chest, scalding liquid spreading across his jacket. He roared in pain and rage, stumbling backward. I didn't wait. I vaulted over the counter, shoving past the clerk, who grabbed at me with surprising strength. My fingers found something, his cell phone, and I kicked him hard in the knee. He went down with a grunt. The back door. There had to be a back door. I crashed through the storage room, boxes tumbling, the trucker's heavy footsteps pounding behind me. There, an exit sign. I slammed my full weight against the crash bar and tumbled out into the night. I ran like I've never run in my life, my car forgotten, my possessions meaningless, into the woods, branches tearing at my face, roots trying to trip me. Behind me, voices shouted. A flashlight beam swept through the trees. I don't know how long I ran. Eventually, I found the highway again, miles from the station, flagged down a semi. The driver took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just called 911. The police found the gas station an hour later, but what they found wasn't what I expected. The clerk was dead, had been dead for hours, they said, found in the storage room, duct taped to a metal chair, eyes wide open in final terror. The trucker was gone, his rig vanished into the night. But the security footage, God, the security footage, the cameras hadn't been broken. They'd been recording the whole time. And the footage showed the clerk, the same man I'd seen, standing behind that counter all night, calmly serving customers, making change, nodding at people who spoke to him. At one point in the video, you could see into the back room through the open door. You could see the real clerk bound to that chair. You could see him watching the person wearing his uniform, watching this stranger who'd somehow gotten the proportions right, the movements right, everything except the eyes. The detective who showed me the footage said they found evidence of at least 6 other victims in that ceiling space. The trafficking ring had been operating for months. But here's what keeps me awake at night. In every frame of that footage, in every angle, they can't see the face of whoever was wearing the clerk's uniform. It's always turned away at just the right moment, always in shadow, always just slightly wrong. And in the last frame, captured right before the power was cut, you can see the figure behind the counter turning toward the camera, finally looking directly at it. The detective wouldn't let me see that frame. He said I didn't need to, that no one needed to. But sometimes late at night I remember those empty eyes, and I wonder if what I saw was human at all, or if something else has learned to wear us like uniforms. The receipt printer screamed to life at 2:12 a.m., and I nearly dropped my Red Bull energy drink. I'd been working the night shift at Murphy's Gas and Go for exactly 3 days, and the silence had finally started to feel normal. Just me, the the fluorescent lights, and the occasional drunk stumbling in for cigarettes. But that sound, that mechanical shriek of the printer spitting out a transaction, sent my heart hammering against my ribs. I walked over to the register, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, the receipt curled out like a white tongue. Pump number 3, $6.66. Cash. I looked out through the smudged windows. The parking lot was empty. The pump stood like sentinels under the sickly yellow lights, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Pump number 3 sat at the far end, and there wasn't a car in sight. Glitch, I muttered, crumpling the receipt and tossing it in the trash. But it happened again the next night. Same time, 2:12 a.m., same pump, same amount, $6.66. I stood at the window for a full minute afterwards, staring at pump number 3, waiting for someone to materialize. Nothing, just the wind pushing an empty plastic bag across the lot like a ghost. On the third night, I was ready. At 2:45 a.m., I positioned myself at the window, eyes locked on pump number 3. I watched the seconds tick by on my phone. 2:11, 2:12. The printer shrieked. I spun around. Another receipt. Pump number 3, $6.66. Cash. But I'd been watching. No one was there. No one had been there. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone to call my manager, Jerry. Then I remembered Jerry had quit 2 weeks ago, right before I was hired. The district manager said something about a personal emergency. No one had bothered to replace him yet. I was alone. The fourth night, I checked the security cameras. We had 4 of them. One on the register, one on the door, one covering the parking lot, and one aimed at the pumps. I pulled up the footage on the grainy monitor tucked beneath the counter and scrolled back to 2:10 a.m. I watched myself standing at the window. I watched the empty parking lot. I watched pump number 3. 2:10:58, 2:11:59, 2:12:00. The screen went black. Static filled the monitor for exactly 17 seconds. I counted. When the feed returned, I was turning away from the window, walking toward the register. The timestamp read 2:12:17. I rewound it, watched again, same thing, 17 seconds of dead air right when the receipt printed. What the hell? I whispered. I checked the previous nights. Every time, at 2:12 a.m., the same thing. 17 seconds of missing footage. Just static and silence. By the 6th night, I wasn't sleeping during the day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that printer spitting out receipts, heard its mechanical scream. I'd started arriving early, leaving late, checking the equipment. Everything seemed fine. The pumps worked, the cameras worked, except for those 17 seconds. The receipts kept coming. I'd stopped throwing them away. They were piling up on the counter now. A small mountain of white paper, each one identical. Pump number 3, $6.66. Cash, I'd counted them. 6 receipts, 6 nights. On the 7th night, I decided I'd had enough. At 2:30 a.m., I locked the front door and walked out into the parking lot. The air was cold, biting at my face, carrying the smell of gasoline and something else, something rotten. My breath fogged in front of me as I approached pump number 3. Up close, it looked like every other pump. Faded red paint, a digital display, dark and lifeless, the nozzle hanging from its cradle. I circled it, running my flashlight beam over every surface. That's when I saw the disturbed dirt near the base. Someone had dug here recently. The earth was loose, darker than the surrounding ground. I knelt down, my knees pressing into the cold pavement, and started scraping at the soil with my hands. My fingers hit something solid. I dug faster, my fingernails caking with dirt, until I pulled it free. A laminated ID badge, scratched and filthy. I wiped it on my shirt. The photo showed a young guy, maybe mid-20s, with sandy hair and a nervous smile. The name read Philip Howes, assistant manager. The badge was dated 3 years ago. I'd never heard of Philip Howes. Back inside, I Googled his name with shaking hands. The first result made my stomach drop. Local gas station employee missing since 2022. I clicked the article. Philip Howes had disappeared without a trace. Last seen at Murphy's Gas and Go during a night shift. No leads, no suspects. Case gone cold. The receipt printer screamed. I didn't want to look. Every instinct told me to run, to get in my car and never come back. But I turned slowly toward the register. 2:12 a.m., pump number 3, $6.66, cash. Something moved in my peripheral vision, not outside, above. I looked up at the ceiling tiles, my flashlight beam trembling in my hand. One of the tiles was slightly askew. My mind raced through the layout of the building, storage room in back, bathroom, office, and above that, the attic. I'd never been up there, never had a reason to. The access panel was in the back office, and I'd been told the space was just for storage, old files, nothing important. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at that crooked ceiling tile. Then I heard it, a creak. Soft, deliberate, the sound of weight shifting on old wood, Someone was up there. My phone was in my hand before I could think. I dialed 911, whispering my location, saying I thought someone was in the building. The dispatcher told me to get out, to wait for the police outside. But as I moved toward the door, I heard something else. Footsteps, fast, heavy, coming from the office, and I ran. The door was still locked. My hands fumbled with the deadbolt as the footsteps grew louder, closer. I could hear breathing now, ragged, desperate. I finally got the door open and burst out into the parking lot, cold air shocking my lungs. Behind me, the door slammed open. I turned. He stood in the doorway, illuminated by the fluorescent lights, gaunt, wild-eyed, wearing a filthy Murphy's Gas and Go polo shirt. His name tag, barely visible under the grime, read Jerry, my manager, the one who'd supposedly quit. "You weren't supposed to dig," he said, his voice cracked and hollow. "Nobody was supposed to find him." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jerry looked up at the sound, then back at me. His expression wasn't anger, it was resignation. "Philip figured it out," he continued, stepping forward. "The missing money, the cooked books. He was going to turn me in, so He stopped, swallowing hard. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I couldn't leave, couldn't let them find the body, so I stayed, watched, waited. The receipts," I breathed. "Oh, I had to know if you'd notice, if you'd figure it out like Philip did." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The cameras made it easy. I could see everything from up there, every move you made." The sirens were close now. Red and blue lights flickered across the parking lot. Jerry looked at pump number 3, then back at me. $666, he whispered. That's what I owed him. $666 for his last paycheck. I never paid it. The police car screeched into the lot, and Jerry raised his hands slowly. As they dragged him away, he called back to me, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Check the attic. You'll understand." Later, after the statements and the investigation, they found Jerry's makeshift living space in the attic. Blankets, food wrappers, a laptop connected to the security system, and on the wall, written in permanent marker over and over, were dates and times. 2:12 a.m., 2:12 a.m., 2:12 a.m. The exact moment, 3 years ago, when Jerry had buried Philip Howe's body beneath pump number 3, and in the corner, still connected to the register system, was a remote printer trigger. A button Jerry had pressed every night at the exact same time, printing the same receipt. A confession, a ritual, a haunting. I never worked another night shift again.